"Be ready," said Dupin, "with your pistols." But neither used them nor showed them until at a signal from myself. The front door of the house had been left open, and the visitor entered, without ringing, and advanced several steps upon the staircase. Now, however, he seemed to hesitate. Presently we heard him descending. Dupin was moving quickly to the door when we heard him coming up. He did not turn back a second time, but stepped with upward direction and rapped at the door of our chamber. "Come in," said Dupin in a cheerful and hearty tone. A man entered. He was a sailor, evidently, a tall, stout, muscular-looking person, with a certain daredevil expression of countenance, not altogether unprepossessing. His face, greatly sunburnt, was more than half hidden by whisker and mustachio. He had with him a huge oaken cudgel, but appeared to be otherwise unarmed. He bowed awkwardly and bade us good evening in French accents, which altogether, although somewhat Neufchâtelish, were still sufficiently indicative of a Parisian origin. "Sit down, my friend," said Dupin. "I suppose you have called about the orangutan." "Upon my word, I almost envy you the prepossession of him. A remarkably fine and, no doubt, a very valuable animal. How old do you suppose him to be?" The sailor drew a long breath with the air of a man relieved of some intolerable burden, and replied in an assured tone, "I have no way of telling, but he can't be more than 4 or 5 years old." "Have you got him here?" "Oh, no, we have no conveniences for keeping him here. He is at a livery stable in the Rue Dubourg, just by. You can get him in the morning." "Of course you are prepared to identify the property?" "To be sure I am, sir." "I shall be sorry to part with him," said Dupin. "I don't mean that you should be at all this trouble for nothing, sir," said the man. "Couldn't expect it. I'm very willing to pay a reward for the finding of the animal. That is to say, anything in reason." "Well," replied my friend, "that is all very fair, to be sure. Let me think. What should I have? Oh, I will tell you. My reward shall be this. You shall give me all the information in your power about these murders in the Rue Morgue." Dupin said the last words in a very low tone and very quietly. Just quietly, too, he walked toward the door, locked it, and put the key in his pocket. He then drew a pistol from his bosom and placed it without the least flurry upon the table. The sailor's face flushed up as if he were struggling with suffocation. He started to his feet and grasped his cudgel, but the next moment he fell back into a seat, trembling violently, and with the countenance of death itself. He spoke not a word. I pitied him from the bottom of my heart. "My friend," said Dupin in a kind tone, "you are alarming yourself unnecessarily. You are indeed. We mean you no harm whatever. I pledge you the honor of a gentleman and of a Frenchman that we intend you no injury. I perfectly well know that you are innocent of the atrocities on Zero Moor. It will not do, however, to deny that you are in some measure implicated in them. From what I have already said, you must know that I have had means of information about this matter. Means of which you could never have dreamed. Now the thing stands thus. You have done nothing which you could have avoided, nothing certainly which renders you culpable. You were not even guilty of robbery, when you might have been robbed with impunity. You have nothing to conceal. You have no reason for concealment. On the other hand, you are bound by every principle of honor to confess all you know. An innocent man is now imprisoned and charged with that crime of which you point out the perpetrator. The sailor had recovered his presence of mind in a great measure while Dupin uttered these words, but his original boldness of bearing was all gone. So help me God, said he after a brief pause. I will tell you all I know about this affair, but I do not expect you to believe one half of what I say. I would be a fool indeed if I did. Still, I am innocent, and I will make a clean breast if I die for it. What he stated was, in substance, this. He had lately made a voyage to the Indian archipelago, a party of which he formed one, landed at Borneo, and passed into the interior of an excursion of pleasure. Himself and then a companion had captured the orangutan. This companion dying, the animal fell into his own exclusive possession. After great trouble, occasioned by the intractable ferocity of his own captive during the voyage home, he at length succeeded in lodging it safely at his own residence in Paris, where, not to attract toward himself the unpleasant curiosity of his neighbors, he kept it carefully secured, until such time as he should recover from a wound in the foot received from the splinter on board ship. His ultimate design was to sell it. Returning home from some sailor's frolic on the night, or rather in the morning, of the murder, he found the beast occupying his own bedroom, into which it had broken from a closet adjoining, where it had, as was thought, been securely confined. Razor in hand and fully lathered, it was sitting before a looking-glass, attempting the operation of shaving, in which it had no doubt previously watched its master through the keyhole of the closet. Terrified at the sight of so dangerous a weapon in the possession of an animal so ferocious, and so well able to use it, the man, for some moments, was at a loss what to do. He had been accustomed, however, to quiet the creature, even its fiercest moods, by the use of a whip, and to this he now resorted. Upon sight of it, the orangutan sprang at once through the door of the chamber, down the stairs, and thence through a window, unfortunately open, into the street. The Frenchman followed in despair, and the ape, razor still in hand, occasionally stopping to look and gesticulate at his pursuer, until the latter had nearly come up with it. It then again made off. In this manner, the chase continued for a long time. The streets were profoundly quiet, as it was nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. In passing down an alley in the rear of the Rue Morgue, the fugitive's attention was arrested by a light gleaming from the open window of Madame L'Espagne's chamber in the 4th story of her house. Rushing to the building, it perceived the lightning rod, clambered up with inconceivable agility, grasped the shutter which was thrown back against the wall, fully, and by its means swung itself directly upon the headboard of the bed. The whole feat did not occupy a minute. The shutter was kicked open again by the orangutan as it entered the room. The sailor, in the meantime, was both rejoiced and perplexed. He had strong hopes in now recapturing the brute, as it could scarcely escape from the trap into which it had ventured, except by the rod. where it might be intercepted as it came down. On the other hand, there was much cause for anxiety as what it might do in the house. This latter reflection urged the man to follow the fugitive. A lightning rod is ascended without difficulty, especially by a sailor, but when he had arrived as high as the window, which lay far to his left, his career was stopped. The most that he could accomplish was to reach over so as to obtain a glimpse of the interior of the room. At this glimpse, he nearly fell from his hold through excess of horror. Now it was that those hideous shrieks arose upon the night which had startled from slumber the inmates of the Rue Morgue. Madame L'Espanaye and her daughter, habited in their night clothes, had apparently been occupied in arranging some papers in the iron chest already mentioned, which had been wheeled in the middle of the room. It was open, mentioned. It was open and its contents lay beside it on the floor. The victims must have been sitting with their backs toward the window, and from the time elapsing between the ingress of the beasts and the screams, it seem probable that it was not immediately perceived. The flapping to of the shutter would naturally have been attributed to the wind. As the sailor looked in, the gigantic animal had seized Madame L'Espanaye by the hair, which was loose as she had been combing it, and was flourishing the razor about her face in imitation of the motions of a barber. The daughter lay prostrate and motionless. She had swooned. The screams and struggles of the old lady, during which the hair was torn from her head, had the effect of changing the probable pacific purposes of the orangutan into those of wrath. With one determined sweep of the muscular arm, it nearly severed her head from her body. The sight of blood inflamed its anger into frenzy. Gnashing its teeth and flashing fire from its eyes, it flew upon the body of the girl and embedded its fearful talons in her throat, retaining its grasp until she expired. Its wandering and wild glances fell at this moment upon the head of the bed, over which the face of its master, rigid with horror, was just discernible. The fury of the beast, which no doubt bore still in mind, the dreaded whip, was instantly converted into fear. Conscious of having deserved punishment, it seemed desirous of concealing its bloody deeds, and skipped about the chamber in an agony of nervous agitation, throwing down and breaking the furniture as it moved, and dragging the bed from its bedstead. In conclusion, it seized first the corpse of the daughter and thrust it up the chimney, as was found, then that of the old lady, which had immediately hurled through the window headlong. As the ape approached the casement with its mutilated burden, the sailor shrank aghast the bride, and rather gliding than clambering down it, hurried at once home, dreading the consequences of the butchery, and gladly abandoning, in his terror, all solitude about the fate of the orangutan. The words heard by the party upon the staircase were the Frenchman's exclamations of horror and fright, commingled with the fiendish jabberings of the brute. I have scarcely anything to add. The orangutan must have escaped from the window by the rod just before passing the breaking of the door. It must have closed the window as it passed through it. It was subsequently caught by the owner himself, who obtained it for a very large sum at the Jardin des Plantes. Laban was instantly released, upon our narration of the circumstances, with some comments from Dupin, at the bureau with the prefect of police. The functionary, however well disposed to my friend, could not altogether conceal his chagrin at the turn which affairs had taken, and was fain to indulge in a sarcasm or two about the propriety of every person minding his own business. "Let him talk," said Dupin, who had not thought it necessary to reply. "Let him discourse, it will ease his conscience. I am satisfied with having defeated him in his own castle. Nevertheless, That he failed in the solution of this mystery is by no means matter for wonder that which he supposes it for in his own truth. In truth, our friend the prefect is somewhat too cunning to be profound. In his wisdom is no stamen. It is all head and no body. Like the pictures of the goddess Laferna, or at best all head and shoulders, like a codfish. But he is a good creature after all. I like him especially for one master stroke of talent, by which he has attained a reputation for ingenuity. I mean, the way he has to deny what is and to explain what is not.